The old warrior Marcus Kane stood in the center of the arena, his scarred hands gripping the plasma blade that had served him for 30 years. Around him, the crowd of alien spectators roared with excitement, their various voices creating a sound like thunder rolling across distant mountains. Marcus was 62 years old, which made him ancient by gladiator standards, but his eyes still held the fire of a man who refused to die quietly. The arena on Station Zephyr 9 was the largest in the Outer Rim territories. It floated in the cold void of space, a monument to violence and entertainment that drew beings from 100 different worlds. Marcus had fought here more times than he could remember. He had won more battles than most warriors won in 3 lifetimes. The aliens called him the Iron Human, a title he had earned with blood and broken bones. Today was supposed to be his final fight. The arena masters had promised him freedom after this match. They had promised he could return to Earth and live out his remaining years in peace. All he had to do was win one more time. But as the gates on the far side of the arena began to open, Marcus knew something was wrong. The sound of metal feet striking the ground echoed through the vast space. Red lights glowed in the darkness beyond the gates, dozens of them, moving in perfect formation. The Cyborg Legion had come. Marcus felt his heart go cold. The Cyborg Legion was not a single opponent. It was an army of machine soldiers created by the Mechanis Collective, a group of aliens who believed that flesh was weak and metal was divine. They had replaced their organic bodies with steel and circuits, becoming something between living and dead. Each cyborg was stronger than 10 normal soldiers, faster than the eye could follow, and completely without fear or mercy. The arena masters had betrayed him. 40 cyborg warriors marched into the arena, their chrome bodies gleaming under the bright lights. They carried weapons of every kind: energy rifles, vibro blades, plasma casters, and shock batons. Their faces were blank metal masks with glowing red sensors where eyes should have been. They moved as one, their steps perfectly synchronized, creating a rhythm that sounded like a death march. The crowd fell silent. Even the aliens who had come to watch violence were shocked by what they saw. This was not a fight. This was an execution. Marcus looked up at the viewing box where the arena masters sat. He saw Lord Carvax, the insectoid creature who owned this station and everyone on it. Carvax's compound eyes glittered with cruel amusement. Beside him sat General Vorn of the Mechanis Collective, his mechanical body polished to a mirror shine. "Human," Lord Carvax's voice boomed through the arena speakers. "You have entertained us for many years, but the Mechanis Collective has paid a great price to see you destroyed. They wish to prove that flesh cannot stand against metal. You will serve as their example." Marcus said nothing. He had learned long ago that words were wasted on creatures like Carvax. Instead, he turned to face the approaching army and raised his plasma blade. The weapon hummed with deadly energy, its blue glow reflected in his gray eyes. General Vorn's laughter crackled through the speakers, a sound like grinding gears. "Look at this pathetic creature. It thinks it can fight us. It thinks its weak body can match our superior forms. Today, the galaxy will learn that humans are nothing more than animals waiting to be harvested." Marcus smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had walked through hell and came out the other side still standing. "You talk too much," he said. The cyborgs charged. They moved with terrible speed, their metal bodies crossing the arena floor in seconds. Energy beams sliced through the air where Marcus had been standing a moment before. He was already moving, his old legs carrying him sideways with the grace of a lifetime of combat. His plasma blade sang as it cut through the arm of the first cyborg to reach him. The arm fell to the ground, sparks flying from the severed cables. The cyborg did not scream because it could not feel pain. It simply turned and swung its remaining arm at Marcus's head. He ducked under the blow and drove his blade through the cyborg's chest. Circuits melted. The red lights in its eyes flickered and died. One down, 39 to go. Marcus did not stop to celebrate. He threw himself to the side as three more cyborgs attacked at once. Their weapons passed so close to him that he could feel the heat on his skin. He rolled across the ground and came up swinging, his blade cutting through a cyborg's leg at the knee. The machine fell, and Marcus was already moving to his next target. The crowd began to chant. At first it was only a few voices, but soon hundreds joined in. Iron human, iron human, iron human. Marcus paid no attention to them. His entire world had narrowed to the dance of death happening around him. Every movement was calculated. Every strike was aimed at the weak points he had learned to find in machine bodies. He had fought cyborgs before, smaller ones, weaker ones, but he had learned their secrets. He knew where the power cells were located. He knew which cables carried their most important signals. He knew that even machines had vulnerabilities. Another cyborg fell, its head separated from its body. Two more collapsed as Marcus cut through their legs. But for everyone he destroyed, three more pressed forward. They were learning his patterns, adapting to his movements. Their mechanical minds processed data faster than any human brain could match. An energy beam grazed Marcus's shoulder, burning through his worn armor and scorching the flesh beneath. He gritted his teeth against the pain and kept fighting. A vibroblade sliced across his thigh, drawing blood. A shock baton struck his back, sending waves of electricity through his body. He stumbled but did not fall. The old warrior had survived worse. In his long years as a gladiator, Marcus had fought creatures from 100 worlds. He had faced monsters with claws like swords and teeth like daggers. He had battled aliens that could change their shape or read his thoughts or move faster than light. He had won against every one of them, not because he was stronger or faster, but because he simply refused to give up. That was the secret of humanity that the aliens never understood. Humans were not the biggest or the strongest or the smartest beings in the galaxy. They were not the most advanced or the most powerful, but they had something that no other species possessed in the same measure: an absolute, unbreakable determination to survive. Marcus Kane was the living proof of that determination. He spun and struck, destroying another cyborg. His plasma blade was beginning to overheat from constant use, the blue glow flickering with warning signs. His armor was in ruins, hanging from his body in tattered strips. Blood ran from a dozen wounds. His lungs burned with exhaustion. But he kept fighting. General Vorn watched from the viewing box with growing concern. His sensors told him that 15 of his warriors had already been destroyed. The human was supposed to be overwhelmed in minutes. Instead, he was carving through the cyborg legion like a force of nature. "Impossible," Vorn muttered. "This is impossible." Lord Carvex said nothing, but his compound eyes had lost their cruel amusement. They were watching something that should not be happening. They were watching a single human stand against an army of machines and refuse to fall. In the arena below, Marcus ducked under another attack and drove his blade through a cyborg's power cell. The machine exploded in a shower of sparks. He pulled his weapon free and turned to face the next opponent, his face set in grim determination. This was not how he had planned to spend his last day as a gladiator. But if he was going to die, he would make sure the galaxy remembered why humans were never meant to be slaves. The battle had only just begun. Marcus fell back against a pillar, using it to protect his back while he caught his breath for a precious few seconds. 23 cyborgs remained. His plasma blade was dangerously hot, and he could feel his strength fading. Blood loss was making his vision blur around the edges. Every muscle in his body screamed for rest. He did not rest, he could not rest. To rest was to die. A cyborg came at him from the left, its vibro blade aimed at his heart. Marcus twisted, letting the weapon pass by his chest, and brought his own blade up in a devastating counterstrike. The cyborg's head rolled across the arena floor. 22 left. The crowd was on its feet now, screaming and stomping and cheering. Beings that had come to watch a quick execution were instead witnessing something they would remember for the rest of their lives. They were seeing the impossible happen right before their eyes. Marcus pushed himself away from the pillar and charged directly at the largest group of cyborgs. They had not expected such an aggressive move from a wounded enemy. Their formation broke as they tried to adjust to his attack. He was among them before they could react, his blade singing its deadly song. Metal bodies fell. Circuits sparked and burned. The air filled with the smell of melted plastic and scorched steel. Marcus moved through the machines like a ghost, never staying in one place long enough for them to target him. His body was moving on pure instinct now, guided by 30 years of combat experience. Another cyborg fell, and another, and another. General Vorn's mechanical hands gripped the railing of the viewing box so hard that the metal bent under his fingers. His perfect army was being destroyed by a single human with nothing but a blade and courage. His sensors could barely track the old warrior's movements. How could flesh move like that? How could bone and blood match circuits and steel? "Send reinforcements," Vorn ordered, his voice crackling with anger. Lord Carvex shook his head. "The arena rules forbid it. The fight has already begun. You cannot add more warriors." "This is madness. One human cannot defeat my legion." "One human is defeating your legion," Carvex replied, his voice flat. "Perhaps your metal is not as superior as you believed." In the arena, Marcus took a moment to count his remaining enemies. 15 cyborgs still stood, but they had stopped attacking. They formed a circle around him, their red sensor eyes studying him, analyzing him. Their shared computer network was processing everything they had learned about his fighting style. Marcus knew what they were doing. They were going to attack all at once from every direction. No human, no matter how skilled, could defend against 15 simultaneous attacks. He looked down at his plasma blade. The weapon was almost dead, its power cell nearly drained. He had maybe a dozen strikes left before it became useless. His body was covered in wounds, and his legs were trembling with exhaustion. But Marcus Kane smiled. "Come on then," he said, his voice carrying across the silent arena. "Let's finish this." The cyborgs attacked. Marcus did not try to defend. He charged forward instead, driving his blade through the chest of the nearest cyborg. It was a suicide move, one that left him completely open to attack from behind. But in the second of confusion that followed, he ripped the energy pistol from the dead cyborg's holster and spun around. The pistol fired once, twice, 3 times. 3 more cyborgs fell. Marcus threw the empty pistol at another cyborg's face, blinding its sensors for a crucial moment. He grabbed the fallen machine's vibro blade and added it to his arsenal. Now he had a weapon in each hand, and the odds were getting better. The crowd's chanting had become a roar, a sound that shook the very walls of the arena. "Iron human, iron human, iron human." General Vorn's mechanical body trembled with rage. This was not happening. This could not be happening. The Mechanis Collective was supposed to be the most powerful military force in the sector. Their cyborg warriors were supposed to be unbeatable. Yet there, in the arena below, a 62-year-old human was proving them all wrong. Marcus fought on. His plasma blade finally died, but he did not slow down. He picked up weapons from fallen cyborgs and used them with deadly skill. Energy rifles, shock batons, vibro blades, it did not matter. In his hands, everything became an instrument of destruction. 10 cyborgs remained, then 8, then 5. The last 5 cyborgs pulled back and formed a defensive line. They were the strongest and smartest of the Legion, the ones who had survived by learning from the mistakes of their fallen comrades. They raised their weapons and prepared for a final confrontation. Marcus stood across from them, breathing hard, covered in blood, both his own and the strange fluids that ran through cyborg bodies. He held a damaged vibro blade in one hand and an energy pistol with 2 shots left in the other. Neither side moved. The entire arena held its breath. And then Marcus laughed. It was a genuine laugh full of life and defiance. "You know," he said, "I was supposed to retire today. I was going to go home and grow vegetables or something, maybe get a dog." The cyborgs did not respond. They could not understand humor. "But you know what?" Marcus continued. "I think this is a better ending. If I'm going to be remembered, I'd rather it be like this. Fighting impossible odds, proving that being human means something." He raised his weapons. "So let's make it count." The cyborgs charged. Marcus met them head-on. The battle for Station Zephyr 9 entered its final chapter. The pistol fired twice, and 2 cyborgs fell. Marcus threw the empty weapon at the 3rd cyborg and closed the distance before it could react. His vibroblade severed its weapon arm, and a spinning kick sent it crashing to the ground. 2 cyborgs left. They came at him together, coordinating their attacks with machine precision. Marcus blocked one blade with his own but could not stop the second from cutting across his chest. The pain was incredible, but he used it, letting the adrenaline carry him through the next few seconds. He grabbed the arm of one cyborg and used its own strength to pull it into the path of the other's attack. Machine met machine, and sparks flew. Marcus drove his blade through the chest of the tangled pair. One cyborg left. It was the largest of them all, a towering construct of chrome and death. It had been hanging back, observing, learning. Now it stepped forward, and Marcus could see the intelligence burning in its red sensor eyes. "You are impressive," the cyborg said, its voice surprisingly clear. "But you are at your limit. Your body is failing. You cannot win." Marcus spat blood onto the arena floor. "Maybe, but I'm not done yet." "Why do you fight?" the cyborg asked, genuinely curious. "You have nothing to gain. Even if you win, you will likely die from your wounds. What drives you to struggle against the inevitable?" Marcus looked at the machine with something like pity. "That's the difference between us. You see death as the end of everything. I see it as just another fight I haven't lost yet." He raised his blade. "And I don't lose." The final cyborg attacked. What followed was not a fight. It was a war compressed into minutes. The cyborg was stronger and faster than all the others had been. It was General Vorn's personal champion, enhanced with experimental technology that made it almost unstoppable. But Marcus was fighting for something more than survival. He was fighting for every human who had ever been captured and sold as a gladiator. He was fighting for his species, for the right to prove that flesh and blood and bone were not weak. He was fighting for humanity itself. The cyborg's blade cut him again and again. He could feel his life draining away with each wound. But he kept moving, kept striking, kept refusing to fall. His vibroblade found the seams in the cyborg's armor. His attacks targeted sensors and power cables and critical joints. Slowly, impossibly, the cyborg began to fail. The crowd's roar had become something beyond sound. It was a force of nature, a wave of energy that Marcus could feel in his bones. Beings from 100 worlds were on their feet, chanting his name, cheering for the human who would not die. General Vorn tried to override the arena controls. He tried to shut down the power, to collapse the gravity generators, to do anything that would stop what was happening. But Lord Carvax's guards held him back. Even the cruel insectoid had been moved by what he was seeing. In the arena, Marcus fell to one knee. His vision was going dark, and he could barely feel his hands anymore. The cyborg stood before him, its own body damaged almost beyond repair, but still functional. "You cannot win," the cyborg repeated. Marcus looked up at it with eyes that still burned with defiance. "Watch me." He gathered every last bit of strength in his body. Every memory, every pain, every hope and fear and dream he had ever had. He poured them all into one final strike. His vibroblade drove upward, punching through the cyborg's chest armor and piercing its central power core. The cyborg's eyes flickered. How, it asked, how is this possible? Marcus smiled through the blood on his lips. Because I'm human, and that's what we do, we fight, we survive, we win. The cyborg fell. Marcus stood alone in the center of the arena, surrounded by the wreckage of 40 cyborg warriors. His body was broken. His armor was destroyed. He had more wounds than he could count. But he was alive. And he had won. The silence that followed seemed to last forever. Then the crowd exploded into the loudest celebration the arena had ever known. Beings of every species screamed and cheered and wept with joy. They had witnessed something impossible, something that would be remembered for generations. A single human had faced an army of machines and emerged victorious. General Vorn's mechanical body seized up as the reality of his defeat processed through his systems. The Mechanis Collective had spent decades building their reputation as the supreme military force in the sector. In one night, an old gladiator had destroyed that reputation forever. Lord Carvax watched Marcus with new eyes. He had owned this human for over 20 years, had watched him fight hundreds of battles, but he had never truly understood what he was looking at. Now he did. Humans were dangerous, not because of their bodies, which were weak compared to most species, not because of their technology, which was primitive compared to many civilizations. They were dangerous because of what burned inside them. They had a fire that could not be put out, a determination that could not be broken. Lord Carvax made a decision. The human Marcus Kane has won his freedom, he announced, his voice carrying across the arena. As promised, he will be released. The crowd cheered even louder. Marcus heard the words, but they seemed to come from very far away. His body was finally giving out, the adrenaline fatting, the pain catching up. He felt his legs buckle beneath him. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was the arena floor rushing up to meet his face. The last thing he heard was the crowd still chanting his name. Iron Human, Iron Human, Iron Human. Then everything went black. Marcus Kane did not die. He woke up 3 days later in a medical bay that was far too nice for a gladiator. The beds were soft, the lights were gentle, and the air smelled clean. It took him a long moment to remember where he was and what had happened. Then he saw the woman standing by his bed. She was human, middle-aged, with gray streaks in her dark hair and intelligent eyes that studied him with obvious interest. She wore a uniform he did not recognize, gray with blue trim, and a symbol that looked like a ship rising through stars. Marcus Kane, she said. My name is Admiral Helena Cross of the United Earth Fleet. I've been waiting for you to wake up. Marcus tried to sit up, but his body refused to cooperate. Everything hurt, and he could see bandages covering most of his visible skin. What do you want? He asked, his voice rough from disuse. I want to offer you a job. Helena pulled up a chair and sat down beside his bed. The video of your fight has been broadcast across the entire galaxy. Every inhabited world has seen what you did. You've become something of a symbol. Marcus laughed bitterly. A symbol of what? A tired old man too stupid to die. A symbol of humanity, Helena said seriously. You showed the galaxy what we're capable of. The Mechanis Collective was considered invincible. Their cyborg armies had never been defeated in open combat. Then you came along and destroyed 40 of their best warriors with nothing but a blade and sheer determination. I was fighting for my life, that's all. That's not all. Helena leaned forward, her eyes intense. You could have surrendered at any point. You could have accepted death. Instead, you kept fighting against impossible odds. Do you know how many species watched that fight and changed their opinion of humanity? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. I didn't do it for politics. I did it because I refused to let anything kill me, especially machines. I know, that's what makes it so powerful. Helena stood up and walked to the window. Through it, Marcus could see stars and the curve of a blue-green planet below. We're at Earth Station Alpha. Lord Carvax sent you here after your fight. He said you had earned your freedom and that keeping you would be too dangerous. Marcus felt something strange in his chest. Hope, perhaps. After 20 years of captivity, he had stopped believing he would ever see his home again. The galaxy is changing, Helena continued. Your fight has inspired other gladiators to rebel. Humans on a dozen worlds are rising up and demanding better treatment. The Mechanis Collective is facing challenges from species they once considered beneath them. Everything is in flux. And you want me to do what exactly? Helena turned to face him. I want you to train our soldiers, teach them how to fight the way you fight. Show them that courage and determination can overcome superior technology. Help humanity take its place among the great powers of the galaxy. Marcus was silent for a long time. He thought about all the years he had spent fighting for the entertainment of aliens. He thought about the friends he had lost, the blood he had spilled, the endless cycle of violence that had become his life. He was tired, more tired than he had ever been. But he also thought about the faces of the humans he had seen during his years as a captive. Scared faces, hopeless faces, the faces of people who had given up because they believed they could never win. He had proved them wrong. Maybe he could help others prove it too. I have one condition, Marcus said. Name it. I want to go back, not as a gladiator but as something else. I want to free the other humans who are still trapped in arenas across the galaxy, every single one of them. Helena smiled. It was the smile of someone who had just heard exactly what they wanted to hear. I was hoping you would say that. We've already begun planning the mission. We just needed someone to lead it. Marcus finally managed to sit up. His body screamed in protest, but he ignored it. He had been ignoring pain his entire life. When do we start? As soon as you're ready. We have ships, soldiers, and resources. What we didn't have was a leader who could inspire people the way you can. Marcus looked down at his scarred hands, the hands that had killed more beings than he could count. They were the hands of a weapon, a tool of death and destruction. But maybe they could become something else. Maybe they could become the hands of a liberator. Tell me about the Mechanis Collective, he said. Everything you know. If we're going to war with them, I need to understand what we're facing. Helena nodded and sat back down. The collective controls 17 star systems in the Outer Rim. Their military is entirely composed of cyborg warriors, each one enhanced with the latest technology. After your fight, their reputation has been damaged, but they're still incredibly dangerous. Their leader, General Vorn, what happened to him? He retreated to the collective's home world. Our intelligence suggests he's planning something. Your victory humiliated him personally. We believe he'll want revenge. Marcus smiled grimly. Good, let him come. I owe him for what he tried to do. Over the following weeks, Marcus recovered from his wounds with surprising speed. The doctors said it was because of his determination, but Marcus knew the truth. He had a reason to live now, a purpose beyond simply surviving to the next fight. He began training soldiers immediately, even while still recovering. He showed them how to fight machines, how to find the weaknesses in metal and circuits, how to use their human advantages of creativity and adaptability against an enemy that relied on programmed responses. The soldiers were in awe of him at first. They had all seen the video of his fight, had watched him take down an entire cyborg army single-handedly. They expected him to be some kind of superhuman, a warrior without equal. What they found instead was an old man with kind eyes and a patient teaching style. He did not yell at them or belittle them. He simply showed them what to do and explained why. He treated every soldier like a person worth saving, because that was exactly what they were. The Mechanis Collective believes that flesh is weak, he told them during one training session. They believe that by replacing their bodies with metal, they become stronger, but they've lost something in the exchange. They've lost their ability to feel, to hope, to fear. They've become predictable. He held up his scarred hand. This body has failed me more times than I can count. It's been cut, burned, broken, and nearly destroyed. But every time it fails, I find a way to keep going. I adapt. I change. I survive. That's what they can never understand about us. We don't fight despite being flesh and blood. We fight because of it. The soldiers absorbed his words like sponges. They trained harder than they had ever trained before. They believed they could win because Marcus Kane had shown them it was possible. Word of the training program spread quickly. Other human colonies sent their best warriors to learn from the Iron Human. Soon Marcus was leading an academy with hundreds of students, all of them eager to follow in his footsteps. But Marcus knew that training alone would not be enough. The humans he had left behind in the gladiator arenas were suffering every day. Some of them would not survive much longer. Every day he spent preparing was another day they spent fighting for their lives. He went to Admiral Cross with a proposal. "I need a ship and a small team," he said. "We can't wait until we have a full fleet. Every day we delay, more gladiators die. Let me start the liberation now, one arena at a time." Helena studied him carefully. "It would be dangerous. If you're captured, the Mechanis Collective will use you as a propaganda tool. They'll show the galaxy that even the Iron Human can be defeated. Then I won't be captured. You're asking me to risk the symbol of human resistance on what amounts to a guerrilla operation." Marcus met her eyes without flinching. "I'm asking you to let me do what I do best, fight for people who can't fight for themselves." Helena was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded. "You'll have your ship and your team, but I want regular reports, and if things go wrong, you call for backup immediately. We can't afford to lose you." "You won't lose me," Marcus said. "I told you before, I don't lose." The ship they gave him was small but fast, designed for stealth and quick strikes. His team consisted of 12 soldiers, all of them the best graduates from his training program. They called themselves the Liberators, and they wore the symbol of a broken chain on their uniforms. Their first target was a small arena on a mining station in the Outer Rim. It was not a famous place like Station Zephyr 9, but it held almost 50 human gladiators who were forced to fight for the entertainment of the station's workers. The mission was supposed to be quiet. Get in, free the gladiators, get out. No major confrontation, no heroics. It did not go that way. The station's security detected their approach and raised the alarm. Within minutes, the Liberators found themselves in a running battle through the station's corridors, fighting against guards and security drones while trying to reach the gladiator pens. Marcus led from the front, as he always did. His blade sang through the air, cutting down anyone who stood in his way. He was older than any of his soldiers, but he fought with a fury that none of them could match. They reached the gladiator pens to find them heavily guarded. A pitched battle followed, with energy beams and blade strikes filling the air. 2 of the Liberators fell, wounded but alive. Marcus himself took a hit to his shoulder, but he kept fighting. Finally, the guards were defeated, and the gladiators were freed. They were a sorry sight, these humans who had been forced to fight for alien entertainment. Thin, scarred, and hopeless, they looked at their rescuers with disbelief. Some of them actually knew Marcus by reputation, and when they realized who had come to save them, they wept. "It's over," Marcus told them. "You're free, no more fighting for their amusement, no more being treated like animals, you're coming home." The return journey was uneventful. The Liberators brought the freed gladiators back to Earth Station Alpha, where they received medical treatment and counseling. Many of them chose to join the training program, wanting to help free others just as they had been freed. News of the rescue spread quickly through the galaxy. Other human colonies celebrated the success. Alien species that had begun to respect humanity after Marcus's arena fight now viewed them with even greater admiration. But not everyone was pleased. General Vorn of the Mechanis Collective watched the news reports with cold anger burning in his circuits. The human had not only humiliated him in the arena, but was now actively working against the collective's interests. The gladiator trade was profitable, and human slaves were valuable property. Every gladiator the liberators freed was money lost. More importantly, every rescue was a blow to the collective's reputation. They were supposed to be the supreme military power in the sector. They were supposed to be unbeatable, yet a single human kept proving them wrong. Vorn made a decision. If Marcus Kane wanted to play Liberator, he would have a proper opponent. The collective would deploy its full military might against this human nuisance. They would crush him and everyone who followed him, and they would prove once and for all that metal was superior to flesh. The real war was about to begin. Marcus Kane studied the holographic map with growing concern. 6 months had passed since the first liberation mission, and the liberators had freed over 2,000 human gladiators from arenas across the outer rim. Each mission had been more dangerous than the last, but they had succeeded every time. Now, however, everything was about to change. The Mechanis Collective is mobilizing, Admiral Cross said, pointing to the clusters of red dots moving across the map. Our intelligence suggests they're assembling the largest fleet they've ever gathered. Over 500 warships, each carrying cyborg soldiers. They're heading for the neutral zone. Marcus looked at the size of the enemy force and felt a chill run down his spine. The United Earth Fleet was growing stronger every day, but they still only had about 200 ships. The odds were not in their favor. "What's their target?" he asked. "We're not sure yet. It could be Earth. It could be one of the major colonies, or it could be something else entirely." Helena's face was grim. "General Vorn has been quiet since your arena fight. We believe he's been planning this for months, maybe years. Whatever he's doing, it's personal." Marcus nodded slowly. He had expected this. Vorn was not the type to forgive and forget. The humiliation of the arena fight would burn in his circuits until he found a way to erase it. "What do you need me to do?" Marcus asked. "We need you to buy us time. The colonies are still evacuating their non-combat personnel. Our fleet needs at least 2 more weeks to complete its preparations. If Vorn attacks before we're ready, we'll lose." "So you want me to delay an entire collective fleet with what? A small ship and a dozen soldiers?" Helena shook her head. "No, I want you to do something far more dangerous. I want you to challenge Vorn directly." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Explain." "The Mechanis Collective has a tradition called the Trial of Champions. When 2 leaders disagree, they can settle their differences through single combat. The winner takes all. If you challenge Vorn to a trial, he'll be obligated to accept. His honor won't let him refuse. And if I win, the collective will be forced to withdraw. Their own laws will require it." Marcus considered this. The Trial of Champions was exactly the kind of thing Vorn would want. A chance to face Marcus in single combat, to prove that his defeat in the arena was a fluke. The general had been enhanced since their last encounter. His body would be stronger, faster, and more deadly than any cyborg Marcus had ever faced. "And if I lose," Marcus said quietly. Helena's silence was answer enough. Marcus looked around the room at the faces watching him. His soldiers, his students, the people who had followed him across the galaxy because they believed in what he represented. They were counting on him. Humanity was counting on him. He thought about his life. 30 years as a gladiator fighting for survival, 6 months as a liberator fighting for others. He had always known that his story would end in battle. He had made peace with that long ago. But dying was one thing. Losing was something else entirely. "I'll do it," he said. The message was transmitted across every frequency the collective used. Marcus Kane, the Iron Human, challenged General Vorn to a trial of champions. The stakes were simple. If Marcus won, the collective would withdraw its fleet and release all human gladiators. If Vorn won, Marcus would surrender himself and the liberators would disband. Vorn's response came within the hour. He accepted. The trial would take place on a neutral asteroid in the middle of the void, witnessed by representatives from every major power in the sector. The entire galaxy would be watching. Marcus spent the next 3 days preparing. He trained with his soldiers, reviewed everything they knew about Vorn's new capabilities, and made sure his affairs were in order. He wrote letters to the gladiators he had freed, thanking them for their courage. He recorded a message for humanity to be played if he did not survive. On the morning of the trial, he stood on the bridge of his ship and looked out at the stars. "Scared?" Helena asked, appearing beside him. "Terrified," Marcus admitted. "Vorn has had months to upgrade his body. He knows all my tricks. He'll be prepared for everything I can throw at him." "Then why are you doing this?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Because someone has to. Because if I don't, thousands more humans will die in gladiator arenas. Because I'd rather die on my feet than watch others suffer." Helena nodded slowly. "You know, when I first saw the video of your arena fight, I thought you were just a survivor, someone who fought because he had no other choice. Now I know better. You fight because you care. You fight because every life matters to you." "Every life does matter. That's what makes us human." The asteroid was cold and airless, a gray rock floating in the eternal darkness of space. A dome had been constructed on its surface, filled with breathable air and surrounded by observation platforms where the witnesses would watch. Marcus walked into the dome alone, carrying only his plasma blade. The weapon had been repaired and upgraded since the arena fight, but it was still the same blade he had carried for 30 years. It felt right in his hands. Vorn was waiting for him in the center of the dome. The general had changed since their last encounter. His body was larger now, almost 3 meters tall, covered in sleek black armor instead of chrome. His sensor eyes burned with a cold blue light instead of red. He carried a weapon that looked like a combination of sword and energy cannon, something designed specifically for killing. "Marcus Kane," Vorn said, his voice deeper and more resonant than before. "At last. I have waited for this moment since you humiliated me in that arena." "You humiliated yourself," Marcus replied. "You brought 40 warriors to kill one man and you still lost." Vorn's mechanical face could not show emotion, but Marcus could sense the anger radiating from him. "Today will be different. I have studied every recording of your fights. I know every technique you use, every weakness in your style. I have designed this body specifically to counter you." "Congratulations. You spent months building the perfect weapon to fight an old man with a sword." "You mock me, but you will not mock me for long. When this is over, your species will learn the truth. Humans are weak. Humans are inferior. And you, Marcus Kane, are nothing but a lucky animal who should have died in that arena." Marcus raised his blade. "Then stop talking and prove it." Vorn attacked. The general moved faster than anything Marcus had ever faced. His massive body crossed the distance between them in a heartbeat, his weapon swinging in a deadly arc. Marcus barely managed to dodge, feeling the wind of the strike as it passed inches from his face. He counterattacked, but Vorn was ready. The general blocked the plasma blade with his armored forearm, then slammed his other fist into Marcus's chest. The blow sent the human flying across the dome, crashing into the wall with bone-jarring force. Marcus struggled to his feet, tasting blood. Vorn was already coming at him again. This was going to be the fight of his life. The battle raged across the dome. Vorn's attacks were relentless, each one powerful enough to kill a normal human instantly. Marcus dodged and weaved, using every trick he had learned in 30 years of combat, but he could not find an opening. The general was simply too strong, too fast, too prepared. Marcus took a hit to his side that cracked ribs. Another strike sliced across his arm, drawing blood. A third knocked him to the ground, and Vorn's foot pressed down on his chest, pinning him in place. "Look at you," Vorn said, his voice dripping with contempt. "The famous Iron Human, the symbol of your species, broken and beaten, just like I always knew you would be." Marcus looked up at the mechanical face looming over him. His body was failing, his strength fading, his hope dying. This was it. This was how he ended. But then he thought about the people watching, the humans who believed in him, the gladiators he had freed, the soldiers he had trained. They were all counting on him to win. And Marcus Kane did not lose. With a roar of pure determination, he grabbed Vorn's foot and twisted with all his remaining strength. The general was surprised enough that he lost his balance for a fraction of a second. It was enough. Marcus rolled free and came up swinging. His plasma blade struck Vorn's leg, finding a seam in the armor. Sparks flew as the blade cut through cables and circuits. Vorn staggered, his movement suddenly uneven. Marcus did not stop. He pressed the attack, targeting the same leg again and again. Vorn tried to defend, but his damaged limb was slowing him down. The balance of the fight was shifting. "Impossible," Vorn snarled. "You should be dead, your body is broken. How are you still fighting?" Marcus smiled through the blood on his lips. "Because I'm human, and that's what we do." He ducked under a wild swing and drove his blade into the gap where Vorn's arm met his torso. The general screamed, an electronic shriek of pain and rage. His weapon dropped from suddenly nerveless fingers. Marcus pulled the blade free and struck again, this time at Vorn's chest. The armor resisted, but the blade's energy slowly burned through. Vorn fell to his knees, his systems failing, his power cells rupturing. "How?" the general asked, his voice fading. "How can flesh defeat metal?" Marcus looked down at his fallen enemy. There was no triumph in his eyes, only exhaustion and perhaps a little sadness. "You never understood. Metal is just material, flesh is just meat. What matters is what's inside, the will to fight, the refusal to give up, the belief that every life is worth saving." He raised his blade for the final strike. "That's what makes us human. That's what makes us strong." The blade fell. General Vorn of the Mechanis Collective was destroyed. The silence that followed seemed to last forever. Then, slowly, the observation platforms erupted in cheers. Beings from across the galaxy were applauding, celebrating, weeping with joy. They had witnessed something that would be remembered for millennia. A single human had faced the champion of the Mechanis Collective and emerged victorious. According to the laws of the trial, the collective was now bound to withdraw its fleet and release all human gladiators. The war was over before it had truly begun. Marcus stood alone in the center of the dome, surrounded by the wreckage of his enemy. His body was broken, his wounds were severe, and he could barely stand. But he was alive. And he had won. The liberators rushed into the dome and surrounded their leader, supporting him, keeping him upright. They were crying, laughing, and cheering all at once. They had never doubted him. They had believed, and their belief had been rewarded. "It's over," Marcus said, his voice barely a whisper. "It's finally over." But it was not over. It was just beginning. News of Marcus Kane's victory spread across the galaxy like fire. The Mechanis Collective, humiliated and defeated, retreated to their homeworlds and began the process of releasing their human slaves. Other species that had once enslaved humans quickly followed suit, fearing that the Iron Human would come for them next. Within months, the gladiator trade collapsed entirely. Arenas that had once hosted bloody spectacles stood empty. Humans who had spent their lives fighting for survival were finally free. Marcus recovered from his wounds slowly this time. He was getting older, and his body had been pushed beyond its limits too many times. The doctors told him he might never fight again, at least not the way he used to. He was fine with that. He spent his remaining years teaching, not just combat techniques but philosophy. He taught humans about courage and determination and the importance of never giving up. He taught them that every life mattered, that every person was worth fighting for, that humanity's greatest strength was not in their weapons or their ships but in their hearts. He also traveled. He visited the colonies, met the people who had been inspired by his story, and listened to their dreams for the future. He became an ambassador of sorts, representing humanity in negotiations with alien powers. His presence at any table meant that humans would be treated with respect. The galaxy had changed because of him, not just because of his victories, but because of what those victories represented. Humans were no longer seen as weak or inferior. They were seen as a species that could accomplish anything, overcome any obstacle, defeat any enemy. All because an old gladiator refused to die. On his 75th birthday, Marcus returned to Station Zephyr 9 for the first time since his famous arena fight. The station had been transformed. Where the arena had once stood, there was now a monument, a statue of a human warrior, blade raised, standing defiant against overwhelming odds. The plaque at the base of the statue read, "Here stood Marcus Kane, the Iron Human. His courage changed the galaxy." Marcus looked at the statue for a long time. He did not feel pride or vanity. He felt gratitude. Gratitude for the chance to make a difference. Gratitude for all the people who had believed in him. Gratitude for the opportunity to prove that humanity was worth saving. He placed his hand on the statue's base and closed his eyes. 40 cyborgs, impossible odds, a fight that should have ended in his death. But he had won. And because he had won, humanity was free. That evening, Marcus Kane sat in a garden on Earth, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. He was surrounded by family now, children and grandchildren of the gladiators he had freed. They called him grandfather, uncle, and friend. They shared stories and laughter and love. This was what he had fought for, not glory or fame or power, just this, the simple joy of being alive, the warmth of human connection, the knowledge that his struggles had meant something. A young girl sat beside him, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Grandfather Marcus," she said, "were you ever scared when you were fighting?" Marcus smiled and pulled her close. "Every time, little one, every single time." "Then why did you keep fighting?" He thought about her question for a long moment. How could he explain 30 years of blood and pain and fear to someone so young? How could he put into words the feeling of facing death and choosing to keep living? "Because giving up was never an option," he finally said. "Because there are things worth fighting for, even when you're scared, especially when you're scared." The girl nodded solemnly, as if understanding far more than her years should allow. "I want to be brave like you when I grow up." Marcus looked at her, at the future of humanity shining in her innocent eyes, and felt his heart swell with hope. "You don't have to wait to grow up, little one. Bravery isn't about being big or strong. It's about doing what's right, even when it's hard. It's about caring for others, even when it's easier not to. It's about never giving up, no matter what." He gestured at the sunset, at the beautiful world around them. "This is what we fought for. This moment right here. Every human who ever stood up against oppression, who ever refused to be a slave, who ever said that flesh and blood matter just as much as metal and circuits, they were fighting for this." The girl hugged him tightly. "Thank you, Grandfather Marcus. Thank you for everything." Marcus held her and watched the last rays of sunlight fade into twilight. Stars began to appear in the darkening sky, the same stars he had traveled between for decades, fighting battles that seemed impossible. But impossible was just another word for not done yet. He had proved that in the arena. He had proved it again and again in the years that followed. And now, sitting here with the next generation of humanity, he knew that the lesson would never be forgotten. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the smartest or the fastest or the most advanced. But they had something that no other species could match, an indomitable spirit that refused to be broken. As long as that spirit survived, humanity would survive. And humanity would thrive. Marcus Kane, the Iron Human, closed his eyes and smiled. His fight was over. But humanity's fight was just beginning. And they would never lose.